The real men in black are both frightening and bizarre. And the strangest thing about them isn't what they say, but how they act and what they look like. They've almost never been photographed or filmed, yet footage exists. Let's explore. Hi everyone, and welcome to Project Bluebook, where we explore all things unidentified. I am Thor, and thanks for tuning in. What we have, as evidence goes, are mostly the testimonies of eyewitnesses who have experienced a Men in Black visit after seeing a UFO or unexplained phenomena, or by researching UFOs or unexplained phenomena. The visit goes something like this. One or two men in black, sometimes three, looking like 1950s bankers or office desk FBI agents from a bygone era, wearing dark suits, white shirts, a tie, a fedora hat, and very often sunglasses and gloves, and a trench coat, come knocking on your door. They visit you at your home and invite themselves inside when no one else is around. Sometimes they're already in sight when you come home. They're there to deliver a message. What you saw doesn't exist, and if you talk about it, bad things will happen to you and your loved ones. Don't ever talk about it. Then they disappear into the night, leaving the experiencers equally terrified and bewildered. While the threat is serious, it's their appearance that terrifies most, because they aren't quite human-like. They look to be pretending to be human for your benefit and anyone in the neighborhood that might spot them, but up close, it's quite obvious that they're not, most of them. They're often only 5 feet tall, but they can also be 7 feet tall. They have pale white or olive-colored skin, completely wrinkle-free, a slither of a mouth, and widely spaced eyes. And they refer to each other by number. There are also stories of regular humans, dressed as men in black, coming to UFO experiencer homes and making threats. But the strangest stories involve men in black that leave the experiencer wondering if they are human or alien, or even if they're biological at all. In 1967, Robert Richardson, while driving his car at night on a country road near Toledo, Ohio, saw an object sitting on the road. Because it was dark and he was speeding, he was unable to fully brake before crashing into it. And the minute he hit it, it vanished, disappeared, says Robert. He stopped the car and got out, and there was nothing there. He visited the site later with a police officer and found nothing but his own skid marks. And on a second visit, he recovered a piece of metal he believed came from the object. He handed the metal piece over to the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization for study, and a few days later, he was visited by two men in black driving a 1953 Cadillac. He recognized the model. This would have been a 14-year-old car at the time, but it looked brand new. It was 11 p.m. at night when he heard a hard knock on his front door, and when he opened, two men stood outside wearing black suits, coats, fedoras, and sunglasses. They did not identify themselves, but immediately asked him to turn over the metal piece. He told them he didn't have it. Then they said, quote, "If you want your wife to stay as pretty as she is, then you'd better get that metal back." End quote. Then they left, and he never heard of them again. He caught the license plate of the Cadillac, ran it at the DMV, only to learn it didn't exist. The takeaway of this story, aside from the threat and intimidation, was their knowledge. Only Robert, his wife, and two researchers knew the metal piece even existed. They had discussed it over the phone. So either his phone line was being tapped from the moment of the incident, or the phones of the APRA organization, or they had insights into his own thinking. It goes to show the MIB program is organized, thorough, and, as we will demonstrate, exhibits features and knowledge and behavior that defy human frame of reality. According to UFO researcher Nick Redfern, author of The Real Men in Black, Evidence, Famous Cases, and True Stories of These Mysterious Men and Their Connection to the UFO Phenomena, they look to belong to an organized covert operation tasked with threats and intimidation as a component of a larger effort to quash stories of UFO sightings. It is consistent with both military and security agencies of the 1950s, based on recommendations arrived at by an urgent need to counter hysteria, curiosity, and inquiry into this unexplained phenomena by the public and the media at the time, including Project Grudge, Bluebook, the Majestic 12, the Richardson panel, and the Condon Committee. They all had a mission to debunk, quash, ridicule, and silence eyewitnesses to make the interest in the phenomena go away. This effort has been organized and appears to be collaborative between human and alien entities, deploying team members with technology skills in mind reading, instant surveillance knowledge of their subject, coupled with this clumsy appearance protocol that has gone unchanged for decades. They almost look to be careless time travelers, disregarding the present period in their theater of operations. The most frightening stories involve characters that are positively not human beings, according to multiple eyewitnesses. And while they do stop short of harming people, their terrifying intimidation and threats are by all account effective in most cases, because the people experiencing them very often do stop talking, and they do stop researching UFOs. But as to the Men in Black encounter itself, that they do talk about. Case in point, September 11th, 1976, at the home of Dr. Herbert Hopkins, a respected family physician in Old Orchard Beach, Maine, he was alone, attending to his passion of UFO incident research, when the phone rang and a man identified himself as a representative of a New Jersey organization that doesn't exist. He asked to come over and talk about a case, and Herbert invited him over. This was 1976, in the days of house phones, not cell phones, which is important for what happens next. Because the minute he hung up the phone, the man was already on his doorstep. Aside from his shock at how quickly he got there, Dr. Hopkins was struck by his appearance. Underneath the black suit was an incredibly pale, wrinkle-free person that didn't look like a real human being at all. This person looked rather like a mannequin, with no eyebrows, no eyelids, and no hair at all on his head, nor anywhere on his visible body parts for that matter. He came inside and helped himself to a chair. He sat down, and all the time he talked, his body didn't move one bit, and when he spoke, there was no sync between his lips and his speech. It reminded Dr. Hopkins of a ventriloquist dummy. The speech was passive, without intonation, emotion, or inflection. He sat perfectly still and delivered his message that Dr. Hopkins needed to stop his research immediately, or else bad things would happen. He then wiped his ruby red lips, which Dr. Hopkins had figured had to be lipstick, and the color came off to taint his suede glove, revealing no lips underneath at all. His mouth was just a slither, a line on his lower face. It was clear to Dr. Hopkins, a family physician, this was not a human being at all. It was not an apparition, or a hologram, or a projection or imagination. It was real. So what it was, he didn't know. Perhaps it was a robot, artificial intelligence, or an alien being, an extraterrestrial, disguised as a human. To the doctor, those were the real options. The visit was about to get stranger yet, however. The visitor told Hopkins to take a coin out of his pocket. He told him to hold it in the palm of his hand and added, "Watch the coin." It started to develop a silver color instead of copper, and then it became bluish. The outlines of the penny became fuzzy and increasingly out of focus. It blurred, and then it simply dematerialized. It was gone. What a strange display of capabilities, and to what end? Making him realize he was dealing with powers he could not comprehend, and that bad things would truly happen if he did not stop his research. He told Dr. Hopkins to destroy all material he had on the UFO cases he was researching. Then, the visitor declared with a speech that seemed to be slowing down, both in rhythm and frequency, as if coming from a radio or a turntable that was running out of battery. He announced, "My energy is running low, must go now. Goodbye." And off he went, slowly walking like a battery-operated toy down the stairs, carefully, one foot in front of the other, to the nearest street corner where he disappeared in a streak of light. There's a strange connection between the Mothman phenomena, UFO sightings, and Men in Black. Briefly stated, the real events that took place in Mount Pleasant, Ohio in December of 1967 and culminated in the collapse of the Silver Bridge over Ohio River, where dozens of people lost their lives, were preceded by UFO as well as Mothman sightings. It was a dark-colored, winged, 9-foot-tall creature, naked and hairy, with large translucent eyes. Many people also saw UFOs over Mount Pleasant during the same days, and many eyewitnesses received visits by Men in Black telling them not to talk about their UFO experiences or their Mothman sightings. This is the most famous Mothman sighting, but not the only connecting case I'm aware of between UFOs and Mothman phenomena, a topic for another episode. Then there's the famous photograph of a real man in black. It involves a UFO investigator in Jersey City named Jack Robinson, who along with his wife Mary began experiencing strange things in 1968. When they left the house or went out for dinner at night, upon return, it appeared someone had been in their apartment even if all doors were locked and windows closed. Someone had gone through Jack's UFO files. It was the only thing disturbed. This was a repeat occurrence. And then, during the day after day, Mary would notice a man standing up against the wall across the street, just staring up at their apartment. She described him standing there motionless for hours. A friend of theirs, another UFO researcher, Tim Green Beckley, was called in, and he managed to take the now famous photo, believed to be one of the few rare photographs in existence depicting the real man in black. Sometimes all it takes is a phone call. Mary Jones, another UFO researcher, was deeply involved in alien abduction syndrome research in the 1990s, when she began receiving strange phone calls telling her to stop her research or else. The mechanical voice on the other end would describe what she was wearing at the time, what books were sitting on her nightstand, and what she had had for dinner that night. It was a scare tactic, stating she was being observed and they knew everything about her. It scared her enough that she stopped her research altogether. Then there's the video footage captured on a closed-circuit security camera at the Sheraton Fallsview Hotel near Niagara Falls in 2008. According to hotel manager Shane Sovar at the time, she and a security guard had seen a UFO outside the hotel windows. They reported the incident to local police, and a UFO investigation team showed up to look at the incident. Weeks later, staff at the hotel, along with the infamous camera footage, described the men in black coming to the hotel looking for Shane Sovar, as well as the security guard. Neither was present at the time, and a hotel front desk eyewitness gave a description of their monotone voices, pale complexion, and artificially looking facial features, exactly as Dr. Hopkins had described them 20 years earlier. Said Sovar, "One of my bellmen approached me with a weird look on his face, asking to talk in private in my office." He went on to describe the strange event that happened yesterday, that there were these strange couple of guys looking for her, end quote. And they were, in the words of the bellman, freaking everyone out in the lobby. He described them as extremely odd-looking, tall, identical in appearance and height, and dressed in old-fashioned business suit and trench coats. They had extremely pale skin, and they did not believe the bellman when he said neither Sovar nor the security guard were on duty that day. When the front desk clerk, later the same day, came into Shane's office describing the exact same thing, adding to the description that they had no facial hair at all, and their hair looked like it was attached to their hats. Not even realistic looking. What scared the clerk most was that as they talked, they stared at her, and it hypnotized her. She felt as if in a trance, under their mind control somehow. This is when Shane Sovar started looking at the security camera footage from the day before. And there they were, confirmed by the front desk clerk and the bellman to be the strange guys that had come looking for her. She saw them walking in, but strangely no camera caught them in the lobby, nor did any camera catch them leaving. The stories of Men in Black date back to the early 50s, and they have continued ever since, not just in the US, but in the UK and elsewhere. I will add one last story, a personal one. A neighbor of mine, a retired army officer, was traveling cross-country with his 2 sons at night, driving through Indiana, when they all saw a disc-shaped UFO around 30 feet in width and at least 10 feet tall, paralleling them out in a farm field, and then suddenly coming towards them at low altitude and crossing the road right in front of them, as if teasing them, taunting them. He slammed his brakes because he was afraid of hitting the thing, and they watched it skim the treetops, dangerously close to crashing and wobbling before it disappeared over a hill in the distance. To him, it felt like this was a joyride or controlled by someone not fully trained. They continued driving before stopping at a roadside motel to sleep. Around 6 in the morning, 2 men in dark suits knocked on their motel room door, and when he opened the door carefully, not to disturb his son's sleep, he said the men simply delivered the message that what they saw last night as an army officer of his exact company, and they named it. Make sure this will never be spoken of again. Well, he did speak about it years later in a whisper to at least one of his neighbors. You can watch and listen to this and other podcasts on Project Bluebook, where we explore all things unidentified. Each day, let's practice compassion and kindness. And please subscribe. I am Thor, and thanks for listening. See you next time.